Episode 13, Never Bridges Again. We're on Spotify now. All the episodes are there. And by us, I mean me and you. How's it going, Patrick?
It's going well, man. Can't ever complain. Football season is wrapping up. I feel like we start every podcast these days with a football intro of some sort.
That was a dogfight last night. Jeez.
It was. There's a lot of talk, obviously, about the refs and all that, which is not too surprising. Seems like every sport I watch, the refs are a bit dodgy, but still.
That's why I wasn't that surprised. But that was just crazy when they, in the third quarter, when they're just like, yeah, we're just going to let Kansas City do that play over again. I was like, what's happening right now?
Yeah, a little bit sketch. But
well, what's the report in Nashville? You mentioned something about snow.
There is a possibility tonight, as this is being recorded. There might be some snow going on. Unfortunately, still got to work tomorrow, so. But we live with that. It'll be fun. First time snowing in Nashville since I've been here, so.
Neat.
I'll just watch it as I'm actually doing work and not actually be able to enjoy it. But that is life.
Well, this is not an NFL or a Nashville podcast. We just had to get that stuff out of the way. But we wanted to talk today about this rookie class, give a little rookie report of a few ones that have caught our eye, because we both really like this rookie. Like, we liked it coming into it, but it's honestly becoming one of my favorites in recent years, which is saying something because all the rookie classes recently have been pretty good. Where does this one rank between the past few years for you?
That is a good question. Obviously, there's a few classes that have, maybe the more star power at the moment. But at the same time, these are all first-year players. You're not going to look at somebody and say, hey, well, I expect to see Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball. Like, those kind of players, I don't want to necessarily say are generational, and I think somebody like Banchero may end up being that guy, and his stats have pointed out for him to be an amazing impact player in the NBA, but it just may not have the star power. But in terms of the overall depth, I think it's one of the best for sure. There's so many good quality NBA players in this draft, which has made it really intriguing.
Yeah, for sure. And it has to be mentioned, like, this is obvious, but when we go into these guys, like, these are their rookie stats. They're so subject to change. And we've gotten so used to rookies being so good right away that sometimes people expect too much out of some stats. But there's definitely just positive and negative indicators to look at with some of this stuff. And I guess I'll get us started. You mentioned Banchero. Obviously, I'm a big Banchero fan, so he was the first one that I was looking into. And like you said, there isn't like a ton of star power in this draft, but he's got that potential to be a big star. He fits that mold of guys we see, like a Giannis, a Zion, even like LeBron, just big, strong, fast guys that also have a lot of skill. Because, he's 6'10", and to be 6'10" with that good of a handle, to be able to score from everywhere, we know the shooting numbers aren't exactly where you want them to be right now, the jump shooting, but he doesn't take a whole lot of them. So one comp that, like, kind of threw me off Banchero, not threw me off, but made me a little bit more worried. Did you ever hear people saying, well, he's kind of like a high-powered Julius Randle?
I haven't actually heard that comparison, but I think it's one of those things given his body type and, he's kind of a big 4 and a small 5. I can kind of see that comparison, yeah.
Yeah, that's like what I was seeing pre-draft. I haven't heard that in a while now. I will say it is interesting when I was looking at some of these numbers. His usage rate is 28%. He's 4th among forwards in the league, which he has the exact same usage rate as Julius Randle. I mentioned the finishing is really good. So he's finishing 67% at the rim. He's 43rd in the league, right behind Julius Randle. So those are some just interesting stats. But obviously he has a lot more potential. He has a better feel for the game. you can't put too much stock in some of his efficiency issues just because this Magic team, has been they were missing guards for most of the beginning of the year. So what have you seen like with his strengths and weaknesses? Obviously, he's got a lot of strengths, but
I mean, when you watch him on tape, his physicality, obviously, I mean, it's one of those things to come into the league as a 20-year-old rookie and already be a physically dominant player really helps. You look at some of his, like the analytics might say, and they're not the highest on him at the defensive end and that kind of stuff. But I do feel like it's an area where he can grow. And at the
he's got the
offensive
body
end,
type for it for sure.
yeah, exactly. Now the question is, where is his long-term fit? I like to think it's at the 4, but given, the way the NBA is, it may be at the 5 on this Magic team and the amount of big bodies they have, it could go either way. So the one thing I would mention, especially from the little bit that I've watched the Magic in person, your point about the Magic and their injuries at guard really do play a big part because, for somebody like him who's kind of a low post, get the ball to him and then either post up or hit a mid-range shot, you need somebody to be able to get the ball to you. And a lot of the times this year when Fultz or Cole Anthony have been missing, or even Jalen Suggs, it's been tough for them to do that. I mean, Franz Wagner is obviously amazing and is a great passer for his position. But that being said, you still need your point guard to be able to get you the ball. And for a long time in this season, they've been playing Bol as point guard and stuff like that. So, I mean, I feel like for Banchero, he's doing really well, especially statistically, given the team that's around him, which I do like the Magic as a young team, but I feel like they really need floor general point guard. And while Fultz may end up being that, he's missed a lot of time, and really their other guards have missed a lot of time, which I think is impacting Banchero negatively.
Well, yeah, if you like look into the Fultz numbers, it's like crazy the past couple of years, the impact he makes, and a big part of that is what we're talking about, that they just need someone who could make a play and pass the ball. Like the Magic are 25th in the league in passes a game. It's a whole lot of isolation, pick and roll, one of their big wings, which is good because they, like you mentioned, Bol, Franz Wagner, there's Paolo, Jonathan Isaac just came back. Like they have a bunch of great, huge. It's like the new positionless wave. But if they could be a little more whole, it would definitely help with the efficiency. But efficiency aside, he's still averaging 20 points a game, Paolo, that is. And so since 1980, only 25 rookies have done that, which, by the way, Donovan Mitchell was one of those, which is partly why he's such an awesome player to me, that he was that good as a rookie. But we're not talking about Donovan Mitchell. But isn't that crazy? 25 rookies since 1980 to do it. And we both probably think he will be able to keep it up. He'll probably make sure to keep it up because it's the Magic we're talking about. He's going to get his. And then he had the stat where he was the youngest rookie to ever score 3 back-to-back 20-point games as his first game. So the scoring potential is crazy. Like you said, with the physicality, like this is the type of player you want in the league, especially in the playoffs when things get mucky. And obviously everyone's looking for big wing defenders now. So the Magic have like a lot of great building blocks with him because obviously Franz fits that mold. Bol has been playing good. So I've been liking what I've been seeing from the. Hey, and don't you think his hair is sick too? Like he's got a cool do when he's just like driving to the basket. Those dreads are like popping up. But yeah. So who was your first pick?
I'll say one more thing on Banchero just to kind of wrap it up. I mean, people can criticize him and that kind of stuff for, the defensive shortcomings, the inefficiencies, but at the end of the day, I mean, I think he's probably at this point the runaway favorite for Rookie of the Year. So, I mean, I think that's just important to mention. And I think, as the Magic continue to build this season and the amount of shots he's putting up is going to help him in the long run.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'll go from somebody who's the alpha on their team to somebody who's become a really good role player on a winning team, which some people may not have expected. That's going to be Keegan Murray. the fourth pick in the draft last year. Somebody who really going into the draft was almost viewed as kind of a role player going into it, which had some people confused why he was considered so high. But the thing is, he fits the prototypical guy at the 3 or 4. He's going to shoot the three very well, and he's going to play good defense. And I mean, his numbers this year, he's taking about 10 shots a game, 45% clip from the field, 42% from three on 6 attempts a game, which is really impressive.
Oh yeah.
For somebody that young. 80% from the free throw line, 12 points a game, about 4.5 rebounds a game. The main criticism of his offensive game is, he's not necessarily somebody who's going to go dribble and create his own shot very often, and he's not a great passer. But those are things he can build onto, and especially on a team with somebody like De'Aaron Fox, who can do the ball handling, and then Sabonis, who's one of those unicorn, or I don't even know if you can call them unicorn centers anymore, but somebody like Jokic, who is also so involved in the offense. He doesn't need to play that role. And I think he's one of the guys, and some of the guys I focus on are more at the defensive end, and he's one of those guys who can impact a lot on that end.
Which
he's
they
only
needed really bad too.
Yeah, because if you look at their team, I mean, Davion Mitchell is the obvious, the defensive stalwart on that team, but they really lack somebody at forward. Harrison Barnes is kind of I would say he's a respectable defender, but at the same time, some of the players you're going out against the West, even in their own state, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, LeBron James, you need somebody who can be physical and play against those guys, and also to free up somebody like Harrison Barnes to focus more at the offensive end. So I think Keegan, watching some of his defensive tape, he still has room to grow. I think one of those things is going to add a little bit more weight. I think he's a physical guy. He's sitting at about 215 pounds is his listed weight. I think he's going to easily put on another 15 and then really be a more physical level to handle some of the bigger forwards in the West. But I just think you got to be really impressed with somebody who's a rookie who's come in and has been such a good role player, and he's just a very smart guy who I think is only going to continue to grow. And as a shooter, to come into the league and be shooting 42% from three on 6 attempts a game, that's really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it fits with like not exactly with what I was saying about Paolo, but this is like, as a role player, this is the mold you're looking for, is a big wing who could shoot. Like he's, like you said, shooting 42% from three. And people did laugh the Kings off for drafting him. Even me and you, like, because we didn't exactly laugh them off. It's just we were such big Jaden Ivey fans. But it's like, one year they dissed the Kings for drafting Davion Mitchell because they had a glut point guard, and then everyone turns around and makes fun of them for not drafting Jaden Ivey, even though they would have had another glut at point guard. But with Davion Mitchell being such a good defensive player and Keegan Murray being a good defensive player, they obviously saw their weaknesses and said, yeah, we're going to draft to fix those weaknesses. So him at the fourth pick, even though he's a bit of an older player, all those strengths you laid out made him such a good pick. And the whole Harrison Barnes thing, he's not like the best, but I still like Harrison Barnes as a fourth, fifth man. And you could never have enough of these wings, which is part of the reason they've been so good this year, with also the addition of Kayvon Herter, who's more of a shooting guard, but he's a big guy, for being a shooting guard. So that size all around to complement De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis has been a big help, and Keegan's been a big part of that. I'm really excited to see how he grows in the future.
Absolutely. Just closing remarks on that. I mean, he's one of those guys that I like going into the draft just because I'm a sucker for a wing. I mean, that's really, like, if I were an NBA GM, I'd basically be constructing the freaking Raptors with just wings everywhere, or even the Magic. So for somebody like him, I thought it made sense, but at the same time, you can be transfixed by the star power, or I shouldn't even say star power, the star potential of somebody like Ivy. But looking back now, I think it actually makes a lot of sense why they drafted Keegan Murray. He's just a better fit, I think, on this team, especially with the acquisition of Herter.
For sure. And what you just brought up is such a good point. It's like, we always learn things from these drafts every year, especially with how the game is changing. And that's something we're probably going to have to start looking out for next draft, is like, Yeah, well, most of the time, a top 10 pick, most of the time, doesn't pan out to be that great. So taking a more experienced player and a mold of player that's super important in the league, people shouldn't have laughed at them for that. So Keegan Murray's been awesome. My next pick is another wing, positionless basketball. You already know who it is, Jalen Williams, J Dub. He was a late riser as the draft was like he was a 20s type of pick, but he just kept rising as the draft came, and even where the Thunder drafted him was pretty high to a lot of people. And he's continued to get love just because I mentioned Paolo's hair. This dude's got the hairdo. He's got that, like when you watch Kevin Durant's kind of slouched over and stuff. He's got that cool look when he's dribbling. That's Jalen Williams, even though he's only 6'6", he's got that look, like the hunched over, like he just looks like a basketball player. He looks so smooth, got such a great feel for the game. And I'm gonna have to do a little numbers dive with him because it was really bringing some things to light. So I'm sure you've seen like his shooting isn't that great, and it's not. But something that's interesting is like you think of him as someone who's like a scorer creating off the dribble. But in his 119 threes this year, 106 of them were off of catch and shoots. And he's been assisted on 97% of the threes he's even made. So he's not really creating threes for himself, but that's okay because obviously he's a complementary piece to what they already have with Shea and Giddey, and he is complementing them so well. He's finishing 72% on the rim, and he's sneaky athletic. Not even sneaky for people who watch him. He has got 55 dunks this year. Anthony Edwards has 45. Zion has 53, converting 59% of his layups. Like, with Shea and Giddey drawing so much pressure to them, and with them having such an amazing feel for the game, he's just such a great, like, six-man complementary. He's kind of a guard, kind of a wing, could score, has great feel. He still averages 3 assists. He could still pass it. He just is he's like the type of guy I want on the Hornets, like a smart, switchable wing that plays competent defense. I know you're a big fan. What have you been seeing from J-Dub?
I think really going into the draft, I think I personally had him a little bit mislabeled. I figured him more to be just a 3-and-D guy. And while, I'm not even going to say that he's really been necessarily the best defender this year, and, we've talked about his shooting and that kind of stuff, he really has still been a useful player because of he's a confident guy, like you said, and also, like you mentioned, his efficiency when attacking the rim and stuff like that. He plays above his size. He's 6'6", about 200 pounds. One of those guys, at the 2 or the 3. But he's confident when attacking the rim, and that will, as time goes on, he's going to get more free throw attempts, and that'll be where his game will really improve. I feel like sometimes he's so confident that he'll just kind of drive the rim on a mismatch and something like that. And it's one of those things teams are kind of learning how to adjust to him and how to defend that, and that you can kind of try and let him create his own shot, and it's not necessarily going to go as well. So I think it's one of those things as he adjusts, and also, as his shooting, especially from distance, gets better, it's going to open up a whole world of opportunities to continue to drive at the rim, but then also punish the defenders while he's shooting. But at the same time, he's still a young player. I think the Thunder knew that when they drafted him, even though he was 21 years old, had a few years in college. He still has a lot of raw ability that still can be untapped.
Yeah, and to my point earlier about like how it's such a good compliment with Shea, one thing is like, so like we've been saying, like the shooting will come along, but to have that great of a feel and touch around the rim, like they've got guys with him and Shea, and then with Chet coming up, where it's like the most efficient shot is near the rim, even in the era of 3-point shots. That's why like the whole Rockets thing is either get to the rim or shoot threes. Well, he's got that getting to the rim part so down, which is actually more rare than you would think, especially for the position he plays. So I'm just, like you said, like once he could, because his form is pretty good. Like when he shoots threes, his form is good. So once he could get that up, maybe 36, 37%, like I'm so excited for his potential. It's just like he's just one of those dudes that's just really fun to watch. And that Thunder team, man, they're gonna be a problem coming up. Like we talked about the Grizzlies last episode, Thunder are gonna be a problem coming up.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really cool to think about the possibility of him being more of like a sixth man, with Shea and Giddy. I mean,
Like
I
New
think those two.
Harden.
Yeah, honestly, in a way, obviously a little bit different play style
Yeah.
and such, but at the same time, I think they have four guys in Giddy, Shea, obviously Lou Dort is still around, and then J Dub here. Those are four guys, and I don't feel like there's a need to shoehorn them all in the starting lineup. I don't think they would. So I think he could really carve out a role as that aggressive, microwave kind of scorer coming off the bench. But he is still 21 years old. I mean, that's the crazy thing. Him and Giddy are so young, and Shea is still young, and is really looking like a superstar player now. So the Thunder have a lot to be excited about. And this was definitely, the Chet pick, obviously, the injury makes it to where we're going to have to wait another year to see how that one pans out. But this is a hit for them. It's definitely a win with the 12th pick in the draft.
Absolutely. So who you got next?
I'll go with, really, to me, and people might be able to criticize me for this. This is the only guy I think should be challenging Banchero for Rookie of the Year, and it's going to be Walker Kessler. And this is one that I did not see coming at all.
Me
Like
neither.
this, I just kind of, well, I mean, first of all, the whole, draft trade and that kind of stuff, because at first it was like, well, it might be on the Timberwolves and such, and then obviously things changed there. But you've really started to see how he's been playing recently with Lauri Markkanen going out, and the fact that he can actually be a scorer as well. You look at the Jazz and the way they were constructed and to start the season, it was about Markkanen and Vanderbilt kind of and Kelly Olynyk. And now their style of play, Kessler, they can't get him out of the starting lineup. Like they have no reason to take him out of the starting lineup because of not only how efficient, he's been when he gets his shooting opportunities. I mean, he's only attempting about 5 shots a game. He hasn't attempted a 3 all year, which is probably a good thing.
He's
But
just your
those are still-
classic like pick and roll center finishes, like dunks, like some layups here and there, which is fine. That's his role.
The thing is, he has good touch as well. I mean, It's
Yeah.
not like it's one of those things he can only improve, I think, because as he gets more confident, takes more shots, it's really going to get better. I mean, one of the comparisons that I thought, because the cheap comparison is Rudy Gobert and that kind of such, but I think is disrespectful to
Walker
Kessler, first of all. Yeah. But also, to be fair, it's a little bit disrespectful to Rudy, even though I don't really care about what he thinks. I really think, somebody like Steven Adams might be a better comparison. He may not be as physical as Steven Adams just because he's more of a lankier guy. But the way his play style kind of represents, I see a lot of that in him. The big concern, free throws, 54%. I mean, that's really the main thing to pick at, I guess you could say. But defensively, I mean, he has been incredibly good at the defensive end. Like I said, just being an anchor, you came into this season, you're kind of like, well, the Jazz might struggle at the rim. But when he is on the floor, the Jazz defensively are so much of a better unit. I mean, just looking at the value of the team, I would say he's the second most valuable player on that team behind Laurie. So very
he plays
impressive.
hard on defense. Like there was a play against the Timberwolves against Rudy Gobert the other where he missed like an easy layup, but he ran so hard back on defense and they passed it back to Gobert and he completely spooked Gobert. And I don't know how much you've been watching the Timberwolves, but when Gobert puts up a shot near the rim, I like scream like I'm watching Michael Myers coming out of my TV. But yeah, just that really hard defense on top of the smart defense. And it feels good that like his college award actually meant something because sometimes college awards aren't very indicative of how they'll pan out. But you mentioned Steven Adams, like he fits that mold. But me and you have talked about in the past talking about Walker Kessler is like he's a lot more mobile than you would have thought. And granted, I didn't watch him much in college, but just assume like 7'1" white guy. He probably doesn't have it, but no, he moves his feet so well, man.
Yeah, I think I was just about to mention it. Really, I think people get fooled and might throw him in that class with somebody like Plumlee
Uh-huh.
or somebody of that kind of. But he is a lot quicker. And the thing is, he's only 21 years old. I mean, that's just. I mean, they're all rookies, obviously. He's only going to improve. I think one of the things that really helps him too is probably in practice every day. I think he's learning a lot from, and he's not an old guy, so it's not necessarily like he's going to teach a lot. But I feel like playing with Jared Vanderbilt every day is only going to help
Oh
him,
yeah.
improve that switchability and that kind of stuff. And then also in practice, he has to go up against a whole different range of guards. Jordan Clarkson is kind of I mean, he's just going to take up the shots wherever. And Mike Conley is one of the smartest players in the NBA. So I think that's going to help him too. And then also his offensive game, getting to learn from Laurie. Obviously, not I don't think Walker Kessler is ever going to be shooting threes. Obviously, weirder things have happened, like Brooke Lopez, but I don't think that's necessarily going to be something he's going to add to his game. But playing with centers with touch or big men with touch, sorry, like Laurie or even Kelly Olynyk can only help to continue for him to grow. So I mean, I don't want to say the sky is the limit, but it's one of those things. They traded away Rudy Gobert and they got somebody who could probably
Right.
be almost as good, if not better, than Rudy in the coming years.
And if people think we're over exaggerating here, we're not. Like, so you linked me a chart about a week ago by NBA University on Twitter. He was right up there with like Brooke Lopez, Embiid, Clint Capella, Rudy Gobert at rim deterrence and opponent scoring percentage at the rim. He's only doing all this in 20 minutes per game, which is like how Jaren Jackson Jr. doesn't play much but has such a defensive impact. He's got 2 blocks per game, which is fourth in the whole entire league. And by the way, I was talking about Banchero earlier, with like how amazing what he's doing with the scoring is. There's only if Walker Kessler could keep this up, he would be the 23rd rookie since 1980 to average at least 2 blocks per game. So we're not exaggerating. Like the fact that he's coming in as a rookie doing all this, and a rim protector is more rare than people think. Like you always say, well, this team needs a rim. It's not that easy to find someone to protect the rim at this level. So like seriously, super impressed. I really like the point you made, how he gets to face all these different great skill sets in that locker room with practice and just be around a bunch of different basketball minds. Like Jordan Clarkson's a great scorer. Mike Conley is a great floor general. Laurie's a great big man scorer. So I definitely like that point you made there.
Yeah, and just in closing, I don't have the statistic in front of me to really tell you this, but if you take away like the first 20 games of the season, where his minutes were kind of more limited and such, if you're looking at his stat lines, he's got a handful. He's got two 20-point games, and he's got quite a few games in the teens scoring wise as well. So I think he's only going to continue to get more confident at the offensive end, and that can only bode well for his development.
Yeah, for sure. So my next pick is gonna be my last because Walker Kessler we overlapped on. But my last pick, we even talked about him a little bit earlier in the year, but Shaedon Sharpe. So I picked Shaedon Sharpe just because, first of all, even though they've fallen off as the year's gone on, I just like watching the Blazers. I like that like collection of talent. They have like really high octane athletic dudes, and Shaedon Sharpe just fits that mold. Like, and part of the reason I like him so much is that he was such a mystery box prospect. Like, we all know he was supposed to play for Kentucky, but just didn't play all year. So the fact that he has come into the league as someone who didn't even play college or overseas or anything last year, and to be this effective. But when you kind of look at the numbers, you could see kind of like how I was going into Al Horford, our last podcast last week. Like you could see when you look at the numbers that Portland's being smart with the way they're using them because they know he doesn't have all that much experience. So like his usage rate is 14%. And some of these numbers are actually kind of similar to what I was talking about with Jalen Williams. But So he's been assisted on 74% of his shots. So he's not doing much dribbling of his own. Like he's got good handle and can dribble to get to the basket. But most of the time, he's doing it off of other people or off of putbacks. Obviously, we know what an amazing athlete he is. Like it reminds me of Jaw sometimes, some of the like hang time, double clutches. He's got 20 alley oops on the year and 41 dunks. So, like I said, just like with Jalen Williams, a high flyer. And even though his like shooting numbers are good overall, the 3-pointer, a lot of that is because of the finishing, but the 3-pointer is pretty low, shooting 34% on pull up jumpers. But he's shooting 43% on catch and shoot threes. So, like I said, he's playing within the offense. And the catch and shoot threes is what's important for me, especially in his young career. Like we mentioned at the top of the show, like these are rookie numbers. And the fact that he's doing this with not much experience last year, like his potential is so crazy to me, man. Like the fact, and do you think this is helping him too? That like low usage, playing within the offense, like you think this could have maybe gone a little more ugly if he was like on Detroit or something? They were like, yeah, just dribble the ball for 18 seconds and put up a mid-range shot.
It's kind of a, it's kind of a give and take situation. I think overall this will help. I don't think I'm not here to say he's a low IQ player, because I think, as you said, he's really played within his role. But I think this will really help him develop as more of the role part of it, because he's just so raw. That's really the main thing coming into it. He's just a very raw talent, and I think everybody knew that going into it. The only thing I'll say is the question is maybe there would have been a better fit in terms of. It's tough to say, because when you play with two great offensive guards like Simons and Lillard, like obviously it's going to help you at the offensive end in a way, because you're not going to have pressure on you to create your own shot and such. You're going to really feed off the opportunities they give you. But at the same time, his fit, I feel like he might have done better on a team where he has more natural minutes at the 2 guard. He's kind of split his time between the 2 and the 3 guard. Thankfully, they've used him more at the 2 than the 3 as the primary guard off the bench. But I think there could have been some better fits for him, I will say. I do agree with your point. I think if he was thrown into the situation that like Jaden Ivey was thrown into, for example, I think it would have gone probably worse for him. So I think it's a little bit of give and take at that end. But like you said, I mean, I do think, his ability in the role, and especially that stat you mentioned about catch and shoot threes, that really gives me a lot of comfort in saying, I have a lot more faith in his potential, just those numbers, because it's easy to look at the 34% and say, well. But the thing is, that's why the whole Keegan Murray stat of 42% is so incredible, because it's not easy to come to the league. People forget the college 3 is shorter than the N.B.A. 3. It's not easy to come in and shoot at a high percentage from distance. I think that number is only going to improve,
and that's really credit to their athleticism too. Is how strong these guys are. Like obviously he's such a high flyer, and Keegan's a good athlete too. But like to be shooting these threes like that, like you said,
Yeah, I mean, really, when you think about it, there's a lot of similarities between him and Jalen Williams. When you think about it, not necessarily, the same sort of role, I think, but at the same time, the athleticism and the size and all that, those two are kind of similar players in that mold. And then the shooting percentages kind of represent that too.
And just playing off of people too. Like they're already just so good, like playing in their role. I did like what you were saying with the Pistons. I do kind of see the other side of things, because it's funny, because if he was in the situation Ivy's in now, it wouldn't be great, because like you said, IQ's still developing, such a raw player. But funny enough, I think at this point, if Cade was healthy, I would maybe rather have him as a fit next to Cade when you look at the catch and shoot numbers, and he gives you like what we were talking about with Ivy with the draft, like being such a good fit with Cade. He would have given you a lob threat, given you an athletic guy. But then, like we talked about earlier, like we just like wings. And even though he's kind of a skinnier dude, he's still a big wing that has potential to develop on the defensive end. Whereas like picking Ivy kind of locked you into just having two dudes that were, granted, Cade's bigger, but it kind of locked you into two point guard lineups, whereas a lot of teams like to use that situationally, kind of like how we talked last week with the Grizzlies, how they sometimes would use Ja and Tyus Jones together. And Ivy's like a lot more athletic, but still. So it's just interesting to think about, like when thinking about like how this draft, even though the whole season hasn't even ended, it seems like some teams would have been better off picking different players. And I don't know, it just speaks to the depth of this draft, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's one of those things, his potential is really that's what it's all about. You can say, well, he may not be the best fit and that kind of stuff, but at the same time, and I've said it myself, sometimes, you want to draft a fit, but when you're in a situation like the Blazers, with Damian Lillard still has time in his career. He still has the ability, to have another window of opportunity. So I think for the Blazers, it makes sense, if you go and draft somebody who's more of that role player.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. I think you take the lottery ticket in this situation. Not saying that Shaedon is necessarily a lottery ticket,
but he was at the time.
Yes, exactly. Now I think you look at it and you have a lot more confidence in his ability to develop into a winning basketball player. So for them, I think it was a risk, and I think it's a risk that's going to end up paying off.
And credit to them for taking their risks, seeing his strengths, and applying them. So good job by Chauncey Billups and all the coaching staff there. So who's your next one?
I'll go with somebody. It'll probably be a little bit more of a quick segment on him. I didn't get the chance to watch a whole lot of offensive film because this guy realistically is not really an offensive basketball player. But it's going to be Jeremy Sochan here.
Wait, did you? So you picked him because he had his career high against y'all the other night? Is that what happened?
He did have his career high. He made the game a hell of a lot more stressful than I would have liked for a game against the San Antonio Spurs. But really, going into the draft, everything was all about, his ability to defensive end and his rebounding. The easy, cheap comparison is Dennis Rodman and such. And I think that's unfair to put the pressure on him as somebody who's 19 years old to come in and be that good defensively. And I think it's shown a little bit. I think there's been times where just a little bit too watching some of his defensive tape. The issue is sometimes he thinks, I think he's still adjusting to the athleticism as the NBA because, when he gets switched onto smaller guards, he gets a little bit too close and he allows the blow by. But at the same time, I think one thing that's important to say, because you look at his defensive rating, it's at just over 120, and people will say, well, that's pretty bad, that's such. The thing is, he's playing on an awful basketball team, to be quite honest. I'm not here to shit on the Spurs too much because I think they know what they're doing. But he is playing on a god-awful basketball team where he's not going to have a whole lot of help at the defensive end. And I think a lot of players, especially the veterans on this team, are most likely checked out. So people like him and Trey Jones and Keldon Johnson, I don't think you can really say a whole lot from that sample size. But the thing is, you can't say he's, I feel like it's one of those things, for him to be averaging 10 points a game, anyway, he's shooting 46% from the field. That is not bad at all. I mean, his three-point percentage is at 27%, and you say whatever, but we all knew that coming into this season and coming into his career was that he's not going to become a three-point shooter this early in his career. It's one of those things I think they will continue to work on in the Spurs and their culture, their development. It may end up being something that he could develop, but it's not a strength of his. His strength is using his physicality to really impact the game in that way. And I think he's one of those things where if you surround him with the right players and also people who can probably get him the better, more efficient looks at the rim, because Trey Jones has been a nice surprise for me specifically. But if you look past that, you're looking at ball handlers on the Spurs. The list is really pretty depressing.
Because how we were talking about the Thunder earlier, how much better would he be on offense with having like Shea and Giddey,
Exactly. And that's the thing. The Spurs, it's one of those things. It's kind of a catch-22 because you get what they're doing, obviously, trying to get Wembanyama or Scoot. which Scoot really would be a pretty cool fit on this team,
For
I would
real.
say. He'd really be the excitement they need. Obviously, Wimbayana is incredible, but Scoot would be exciting. But that would really, I think, really help Sochan to become more effective at the offensive end, because really what it comes down to right now, he's just kind of taking his licks. I mean, that's kind of what it is. He's getting the opportunity to take 9 shots a game, which I think could hurt him possibly if he doesn't take the confidence well. But given the Spurs development, it's weird to see the Spurs tanking and such. But I think they know what they're doing, and I think hopefully for his sake, the amount of shots he's getting, and he's not really done that bad at the offensive end. It'll help him in the future.
Well, you talked a lot about defense. Like, I just love him and Keegan Murray's fit. That's why I like this pick at the time. Because, like you said, like, not everyone has to be a 3-point shooter. Like, this guy is a great energy hustle guy. And my favorite stat is rebounding. I mean, he's right up there with the likes of Aaron Gordon, which we talked about. With the offensive rebounding rate, he's got 6.7 of his team's misses. He rebounds. What is he at? 1.7 offensive rebounds a game as a rookie. So I like stats like that. Like, you need guys like this. Obviously, you mentioned Rodman mostly because he likes to do his hair like Rodman. Like, you need the crazy hustle energy guys that'll duke it out on defense. And yeah, if they complement Scoot or Victor with all these guys they've compiled, I like them whenever I watch them. And even though we knew he would be more of a finisher coming in, like I said, that's a valuable skill to have good touch around the rim, which when he dropped his career high against y'all the other night, that's what he was doing, getting to the rim, nice feathery layups, Euro steps, and that kind of thing. So I like Sochan a lot.
Yeah, I think one of the last things you can look at is, the last 6 games he's played, he scored 30, obviously, against the Suns, but 14, 18, 16, 16, and 15. I mean, as the season continues to go on, more of probably the Spurs will probably trade some of their more veteran players away at the deadline, if I had to guess. He's going to get even more opportunities to put up shots. If you look at his shot attempts, he put up 25 against the Suns. Obviously, he might be an outlier, but 14, 11, 10, and 12 shots in the previous 4 games. So he's getting more opportunities to take those shots. And I think like I said, I think in a system like the Spurs and the culture that they have, I think that'll benefit him in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. So who's your last pick?
My last pick is somebody we were comparing about earlier. It's going to be Jaden Ivey, our love child before the draft. We could say, we just love the idea of the fit between him and Cade. The real disappointment has just been that we haven't really gotten to see that as much as we'd like because of Cade being hurt. But we talk about it, young players coming into the league, and I mean, he's averaging 15 points a game. The thing that I guess you could say is the efficiency is kind of not good.
It's not good across the board. Like, every single stat, rim, mid-range, everything is down for him.
Yeah, and I mean, also the other thing is the defensive stuff. I mean, it just really hasn't been good at the defensive end. He's one of those guys where the easy thing to say is, well, he's just empty stats, and I do think there's a part of that. But when you're somebody this young, I don't think it's necessarily going to be one of those things where I just hope he doesn't get that reputation. Not that he should really care, because they said Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell were empty stats at one point, so those people don't know what the hell they're talking about. Really, the development of his game is going to come down to the defensive end. I think it's one of those things. His scoring is always going to be there. Obviously, the efficiency, but once again, I mean, God, I feel like I'm beating a damn dead horse at this point. A lot of these players, they're not having the point guards they need to really develop. I feel like, somebody like Jalen Williams, yeah, he's been more efficient, but like we've talked about, he has Shea and Giddey getting him the ball. A lot of this season, he's had Killian Hayes and Corey Joseph, who are not on that level to get him the ball. Obviously, Ivey's game is a little bit more about creating his own shot, 12 and a half field goal attempts per game and such. But at the same time, in a lot of games, too, he's been the guy for the Pistons. I mean, Bogdanovich has obviously helped, hand out a lot, but in terms of creating his own shot, he has been the guy this season, which is a hell of a lot to ask for a 20-year-old player coming into the league. So I think the potential is still there 100%. I think some people may overreact to this season, and you may look at it and say, well, he's probably not going to be like Donovan Mitchell and such, which I think was kind of an easy comparison to make just because of whatever. But he still has a lot of potential. And I think, as the Pistons hopefully continue to build around him and Cade, those two guys, if you build around them, I think Ivy still has a very good career in front of him.
Yeah, I am not out on him whatsoever because, like you said, a lot of this is situation. He's on the damn Pistons, and efficiency aside, he's still dropping 15, 4, and 4. The field goal percentage overall is about where Oubre is, and it's like everyone's clamoring that for Oubre's scoring ability. So it's like he'll be fine. I think he'll be good. He might not be exactly the star that we thought, but I mean, when you're getting in the draft, you're filling all these fantasies in your head about these guys. He's having an all right rookie year. It would just be nice if the next couple of years we could see at least somewhere in his shooting splits. Hopefully, somewhere it goes up, especially at the rim. I mean, 56% isn't like awful, but for the type of athlete he is, you would like to see that to go up, but at the same time, it's just that team doesn't have a lot of shooting outside of Boyan, so it's like teams don't need to worry about them too much outside. So I don't know. Honestly, I will say, like, I have seen some of Ivy this year. Obviously, time is valuable. Time is a resource. I'm not gonna watch much Pistons, but yeah, once Cade comes back next year, once they have their new draft pick kicking, I'm excited to keep the Ivy train rolling. But yeah, well, shoot, yeah. I guess in summary, but so we'll definitely do another one of these. Check in on how the rookies are doing in a month or two. Pick out some new guys to talk about. But this class, like we've gone over it, it's just you're seeing the progression of just basketball players in general. You're seeing this new era and generation of players that grew up with YouTube, being able to look stuff up all the time, all the AAU stuff. And what people underrate is like diets, like we've gotten so much smarter about diets and especially instilling that thing into the newer generations. And you're seeing that with some of these athletes, like they're like Ivy, Shaedon Sharpe, all these guys, Jalen Williams. It's like even Walker Kessler being able to move his feet as a 7'1" guy. The way we're progressing as a society with these athletes is like, it's crazy how good these guys are coming out. And even though some of these like stats are down in some ways, it's like we should be so lucky to have this many rookies coming in playing this way.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And, most importantly to mention, I'm hoping some of the guys that have really been, developing later on. I mean, not saying that Bol is necessarily the best example of this, but somebody like Laurie as well. These guys are not necessarily guaranteed to come into the league and immediately have that kind of impact. It can take time. I mean, you got to remember, most of the guys coming in the league,
different for everyone.
Most of these guys are 1 year out of high school when they're entering the league. I mean, that is a lot to ask for 20-year-olds to be playing in a grown man's league. So, and situation is such a key thing. I mean, we can't talk about that enough. The situations that they come into, that'll really help. And that can really, where you can make your determinations on whether or not this player is a bust or not. Because it'll happen. Some of these guys will end up busting.
Yeah.
But it's too early to say either way on any of these.
And I feel like why we've had like such a crazy positive tone, aside from just liking this draft class a lot, is just like just because it's just draft season is just really fun. Like me and you are always texting about all the prospects. You were saying earlier you like watching college to check in on these guys. Just like thinking and it's probably that 2K league mode coming into your brain, but it's just like thinking of all the possibilities of like, oh, this team got that guy, this team got that guy, and now that we're like over halfway through the season, seeing some of these guys pan out, like not just our imagination when they got drafted, it's been just really fun to watch. And yeah, I'm thankful for this draft. You hear that, people? Just be thankful for NBA draft classes if you're ever feeling down. Well, Patrick, you got anything else to say to the peeps?
No, I mean, I definitely agree. I think it's going to be great to do another one of these because there's a lot of, like I said, it's a deep draft. We can discuss a lot of good players, I think, that have really come to the NBA and had a solid start. But this was a good start, to develop some of our develop. I'm so caught up in development to discuss some of our favorites so far.
Well, for sure, as always, it was fun. And like I said earlier, we are on Spotify now. We're official. Thank you so much to Rob Called Zeus for the great art, man. It's just I love our cover. He adjusted it for us for Spotify. It looks great. So yeah, well, all right then, Patrick. I'll see you next time, man.